Remember those bouncing screensavers that used to be all the rage, not just on computers, but on pretty much anything with a display? You know, the ones with the logo that bounced around in a predictable pattern, bouncing back and forth at slight angles? Do you remember thinking, gee, that looks like a great way for enemies to move in a video game? If so, then congrats, you're apparently the person who created Princess.Loot.Pixel.Again, or PLPA for short, since I never want to say the full name of this game again if I can possibly avoid it. In a sea of indie titles that are truly awful, PLPA is not that bad. That is, however, the highest amount of praise I can squeeze out to cover this giant pile of awfulness since PLPA is a really, really bad game. The game design is terrible, the controls are terrible, the interface is terrible, the enemies are terrible. The music, though, is simply a crime against nature. I feel bad whenever I have to give a negative review of a game, but this is a case where this one is well and truly deserved. Unlike Warden, Melody of the Undergrowth, which I described as having a lot of potential and just falling short, PLPA is a game that has no potential, no original design ideas, no interesting gameplay mechanics, and nothing up its sleeve that makes me think this is something that someone out there would want to play. PLPA is a 2D action-adventure side-scroller where you run left and right, jump, drop through floors, and use a couple of basic attacks on enemies that stand still, don't attack you, and occasionally bounce around in predictable patterns that will remind you of a Windows XP screensaver. If you're old enough to remember Windows XP, that is. The design of the enemies, backgrounds, weapons, items, and, well, everything is very bland and simplistic to the point of looking like some free textures and sprites were slapped into Game Maker before someone spent a few hours creating a quote-unquote randomized level generator and then listed the quote-unquote finished product for sale on Steam. Described in its listing as a roguelite, PLPA does technically have some roguelike elements, such as sending you back to the very start of the game every time you die. This might be challenging if the entire game didn't take more than 30 minutes max to complete, with 95% of that time taken up by wandering around the randomly generated rooms, trying to find a doorway to the next level. Enemies don't attack you as you wander around, choosing instead to either walk or float along locked paths if they aren't standing still, teleport around randomly, or in the case of bosses, just bounce off the walls very slowly while telegraphing their every move, and providing absolutely no challenge whatsoever to defeat. The biggest challenge in playing this game is just finding the doors to the next level. A PLPA's controls and settings are equal in their suckiness, with the graphics settings consisting of windowed or full screen, and the sound settings consisting of adjusting the music and effects volumes. This, by the way, is the reason for this really weird layout of this video, as my screen resolution is 1610 instead of 16:9, meaning full screen recording would actually look worse in this case. Normally, I get around this quite easily by setting the resolution in-game or through a configuration file or something, but hey, don't worry, the dev said that basic setting will be coming in a future update, so that's cool. The controls for PLPA are also not configurable, so if you don't like having to use the J key for your primary attack, or the E key for your interaction, and Shift for whatever Shift does, too bad. And maybe key binding is something that can come in a future update? If the keys that were chosen by default weren't so random and off the wall and weird, I wouldn't pick on such a trivial aspect being left out, but come on. Compared to the rest of what goes into a game, key binding has to be one of the simpler things to implement. Okay, so maybe the game itself stinks, but what about the sound? I already described the music as a crime against nature, being a homemade thumping techno/dubstep mix that might hurt my brain if it hadn't already shattered my eardrums. This isn't just coming from someone who dislikes dubstep either. I enjoy music from virtually every genre except country western, which I absolutely despise. So when I say that PLPA's music is bad, I don't mean that I don't enjoy dubstep, I mean it's just bad. It doesn't fit with the game, it doesn't fit with the overall look and feel, it's poorly composed, it just sucks. To add insult to injury though, the soundtrack is available as a separate purchase. So if you're looking for a real mood setter, be sure and pick it up and then you too can burst your friends' eardrums at will. The ultimate sin that PLPA commits is by being too bare bones and simplistic to be even worth a passing glance. With more work, could this game be a decent one to play? Maybe? As I already said, there's basically no potential in the game as it is, and I don't see any way that potential could be pulled out of the game in its current state even with months of work. Priced at under $5 on Steam, PLPA isn't worth even a fraction of that. It provides virtually no entertainment and is really only worth buying if you're interested in a case study on how to make a game that's as far from being fun as possible. I'm Mike and this is Game Night with Mike. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back again soon.